the casebook of Sherlock Holmes, 1927, Episode 8, Shoscombe Old Place. Welcome back, fellow detectives. After witnessing the terrifying reach of secret societies in our last investigation, you might think you've encountered every kind of desperate criminal. But today's case will introduce you to a different breed of villain, one driven not by ideology or revenge, but by gambling debts so crushing that he's willing to commit the most macabre deceptions imaginable. Have you ever wondered how far someone would go to prevent financial ruin? What would you do if your entire fortune depended on keeping a death secret for just a few more weeks? Prepare yourself for one of Holmes's most unsettling cases, where a beloved racehorse, a missing lady, and a midnight crypt all connect in ways that will make your skin crawl. Picture yourself in the spring of 1902, in the comfortable sitting room of 221 Baker Street. Holmes has been sorting through his morning correspondence with evident disinterest, requests to find lost cats, investigate suspected infidelities, trace missing servants. The great detective seems almost disappointed by the mundane nature of modern crime, but then a particular letter catches his attention and you see that familiar gleam spark in his eyes. Watson, this is rather interesting. It concerns Shoscombe Old Place in Berkshire, one of the oldest estates in England and currently home to Sir Robert Norberton, described here as the greatest rascal and most daring rider in England. What's the problem? Watson asks, setting down his medical journal. Holmes reads aloud. The letter is from John Mason, head trainer at the Shoscombe stables. He says his employer has been behaving most peculiarly for the past week, and he fears something terrible has happened to Lady Beatrice Folder, Sir Robert's sister who owns the estate. Now, here's where your detective instincts should start tingling. Why would a horse trainer be concerned about his employer's sister? What kind of peculiar behavior would alarm someone who works with high-strung racehorses and temperamental aristocrats every day? Think about what you would consider genuinely suspicious in such circumstances. Within an hour, John Mason arrives at Baker Street, a weather-beaten man in his 50s with the bow legs and careful movements of someone who's spent a lifetime around horses. He twists his cap nervously as he settles into the client chair, clearly uncomfortable in the city. Mr. Holmes, I wouldn't have troubled you except that something is very wrong at Shoscombe, and I fear for Lady Beatrice's safety. You see, Sir Robert is a gambling man, owes money to every bookmaker in England, they say, but he's always been devoted to his sister, who owns the estate and allows him to run the racing stables. Holmes lights his pipe and settles back. Tell me about this peculiar behavior that concerns you, Mr. Mason. Be specific. What exactly has changed? And here, detective, pay close attention to Mason's observations. Sometimes the smallest details reveal the deepest secrets. It started about 10 days ago, Mason explains. Lady Beatrice used to drive out every day in her carriage. You could set your watch by it. She'd ride through the grounds, always accompanied by her spaniel. But now she never leaves the house, and when she does appear at the window, there's something wrong about her. Wrong in what way? Holmes asks sharply. Mason struggles to articulate his unease. It's hard to say, Mr. Holmes. Her movements seem different somehow. And strangest of all, Sir Robert gave away her spaniel. Lady Beatrice loved that dog more than anything in the world. She'd never have allowed it to be sent away. Watson interjects. Perhaps she's simply ill, confined to her rooms? But Mason shakes his head vigorously. That's what I thought at first, Doctor, but then I noticed something that chilled my blood. 3 nights ago, I couldn't sleep and was walking near the old church on the estate. It was past midnight when I saw Sir Robert and his friend Sam Brewer, he's a known prize fighter, entering the crypt with a lantern. Now, your pulse should be quickening, detective. What possible legitimate reason would two men have for visiting a family crypt at midnight? What might they be hiding in a place filled with the dead? Consider the implications before Holmes makes them explicit. I watched from behind a yew tree, Mason continues, his voice dropping to a whisper. They were in there for 20 minutes, and when they came out, they were carrying a large bundle wrapped in canvas. They loaded it into a dog cart and drove away toward the grounds. I followed at a distance and saw them throw the bundle into the furnace at the old furnace house. Holmes's eyes narrow with intense interest. A bundle large enough to contain what, would you say? Mason swallows hard. Large enough to contain a body, Mr. Holmes. And the next morning, I noticed that one of the old coffins in the crypt had been disturbed. The lid wasn't sitting quite right. Good heavens, Watson exclaims. You think Sir Robert has murdered his sister and hidden the body in the crypt? But Holmes raises a cautionary hand. Let's not leap to conclusions just yet, Mr. Mason. You mentioned that Sir Robert is deeply in debt. Does his financial situation depend on his sister in some way? That's the crucial point, Mr. Holmes, Mason replies eagerly. Lady Beatrice has a life interest in the Shoscombe estate. She can live there and use the income until her death, at which point everything passes to her cousin. Sir Robert has spent years building up the racing stables, and his horse Shoscombe Prince is favoured to win the Derby next week. That victory would clear all his debts and restore his fortune. Here's where the pieces start fitting together in your mind, detective. What would happen to Sir Robert's racing operation if Lady Beatrice died before the Derby? Would he be allowed to continue training the horses and collect the winnings? Think about the timing. Why would someone need to conceal a death for just a few more days? Holmes springs into action with characteristic decisiveness. Mr. Mason, Watson and I will visit Shoscombe tomorrow. Say nothing to anyone about consulting me. Arrange for us to arrive as prospective buyers interested in purchasing yearlings from the stables. We need to observe Sir Robert's behavior without raising his suspicions. The next afternoon finds you accompanying Holmes and Watson on the train to Berkshire, traveling through the beautiful English countryside toward whatever dark secrets await at Shoscombe Old Place. The estate, when you finally see it, is magnificent, rolling parkland, ancient oaks, and at its heart, a sprawling Elizabethan manor house that speaks of centuries of aristocratic privilege. Sir Robert Norberton proves to be a hard-faced man in his 50s with the weathered complexion of someone who lives outdoors and the nervous energy of a compulsive gambler. He shows you around the stables with evident pride, particularly when presenting Shoscombe Prince, a magnificent bay stallion that radiates power and speed. This horse will win the Derby, Sir Robert declares with absolute certainty. I've staked everything on it, my reputation, my future, everything. Notice how his hands shake slightly as he pats the horse's neck, and how his eyes keep darting toward the manor house as if expecting something dreadful to emerge. Holmes, playing the role of interested buyer, asks casually, I understand Lady Beatrice takes a keen interest in the stables. For just an instant, Sir Robert's face goes rigid with something that might be fear or guilt. My sister is unwell at present. She keeps to her rooms and sees no one, but I assure you she approves entirely of my racing operations. That evening, after examining the horses and discussing potential purchases, Holmes suggests a walk through the estate grounds. I'd like to see the old church Mr. Mason mentioned. I'm interested in historical architecture. Sir Robert reluctantly agrees, though you notice how his jaw clenches when the ancient crypt is mentioned. The church proves to be a beautiful Norman structure, dating back to the 12th century with weathered stone walls and leaning headstones surrounding it. The crypt entrance is secured with a heavy iron gate, but Holmes notes with interest that the lock has been recently oiled, unusual for a supposedly unused family vault. Mr. Mason, Holmes whispers once, Sir Robert has returned to the stables. I need you to do something that may seem peculiar. Tonight, retrieve Lady Beatrice's spaniel from whoever Sir Robert gave it to. Bring the dog to the manor house tomorrow morning and observe what happens. The next morning brings a scene that confirms Holmes's darkest suspicions. When Mason arrives with the spaniel, the dog immediately begins barking furiously at the manor house windows, but not with joy at seeing its mistress. The bark is one of fear and aggression, the sound a dog makes when confronting a stranger. You see, Watson? Holmes murmurs. That dog doesn't recognize the woman in Lady Beatrice's rooms, which means it isn't Lady Beatrice. The implications hit you like a physical blow, detective. If the woman in the house isn't Lady Beatrice, then who is she? And where is the real Lady Beatrice? That night, Holmes insists that you all conduct a midnight investigation of the crypt, a prospect that fills even the stoic Watson with apprehension. Armed with dark lanterns and picks for the lock, you creep through the moonlit churchyard toward the iron gate. The crypt, when you finally enter it, is everything you imagined a tomb would be. Cold stone walls lined with ancient coffins, the air thick with the musty smell of death and decay. Holmes methodically examines each coffin, noting which have been recently disturbed. Here, he announces, indicating a relatively new coffin bearing Lady Beatrice's family crest. Help me open this, Watson. With considerable effort, they pry open the lid, and you brace yourself for the horror of seeing a murder victim's corpse. But the coffin is empty, or rather, it contains only old bones that crumbled to dust at the touch. These remains are ancient, Holmes observes with satisfaction. Sir Robert removed them to make room for something else, or someone else, but the body isn't here now, which means our midnight visitors took it elsewhere. The final piece of the puzzle falls into place the next day when Holmes receives a telegram from his network of informants. Lady Beatrice Folder died of natural causes 1 week ago. Death certificate signed by Dr. James Norris of Reading, witnessed by nurse Ethel Carruthers. Body not yet registered for burial. So she's dead after all, Watson says sadly. But why the elaborate deception? Why hide her death and install an imposter in her place? Holmes's explanation reveals the cold calculation behind the crime. Because, my dear Watson, if Lady Beatrice's death becomes public knowledge before the Derby, Sir Robert loses everything. The estate passes immediately to her cousin, who would certainly shut down the racing operation. Sir Robert would lose his stables, his horse, and his chance to win the fortune that would clear his crushing debts. So he's keeping her death secret until after the race. You realize with growing horror, but where is her body now? Holmes's expression is grim. Remember Mason's testimony about the bundle thrown into the furnace? I fear Lady Beatrice has been cremated, destroyed to eliminate any evidence that might give away the timing of her death. The complete picture emerges through Holmes's investigation. Lady Beatrice died suddenly of heart failure 1 week ago. Sir Robert, facing financial ruin if her death became known before the Derby, convinced her nurse to impersonate her at the windows while he disposed of the body. The spaniel was given away because it would have exposed the imposter immediately. The old coffin in the crypt was emptied to temporarily hide Lady Beatrice's body until it could be secretly cremated, leaving no evidence of when she actually died. After the Derby, Sir Robert planned to discover her death and claim it had just occurred, allowing him to collect his winnings before the estate changed hands. It's monstrous, Watson declares, to desecrate his own sister's body for gambling debts. But Holmes sees layers of tragedy in the crime. Sir Robert Norberton is not a murderer, Watson. His sister died naturally, and he acted out of desperation, not malice. Nevertheless, he's committed serious crimes, concealing a death, fraud, desecration of remains. The confrontation with Sir Robert reveals a broken man who thought he could outsmart fate. I loved my sister, Mr. Holmes, but she was dying anyway. The doctors gave her only months to live. When she passed suddenly, I saw a chance to save everything we'd built together. The stables were her passion too. Was it really so wrong to ensure that passion survived her death? Holmes's response cuts to the heart of the moral question. You defiled your sister's remains and perpetrated an elaborate fraud for money, Sir Robert. You can dress it up as honoring her memory, but the truth is you chose gambling debts over respect for the dead. That choice defines you in the end. Sir Robert is arrested before the derby can be run. Shoscombe Prince, that magnificent horse that represented his last hope, races without him and finishes second, so close to the fortune that might have been. The estate passes to Lady Beatrice's cousin, who immediately closes the racing operation. The nurse who impersonated Lady Beatrice is prosecuted for fraud but receives a lenient sentence, having been coerced by Sir Robert's desperate pleading and promises of payment. Sam Brewer, the prize fighter who helped dispose of the body, turns King's evidence and escapes with probation. Another case concluded, Holmes muses, as you return to London, but this one leaves a bitter taste. Sir Robert Norberton was not an evil man, merely a weak one who made catastrophic choices under pressure. His sister's death should have been mourned with dignity. Instead, it became the centerpiece of a grotesque conspiracy. So, tell me, Detective, did you suspect the truth when you heard about the midnight visit to the crypt? Could you have deduced that Lady Beatrice was already dead from the spaniel's reaction? And most importantly, where do we draw the line between understanding someone's desperate circumstances and condemning their criminal choices? This unsettling case reminds us that financial desperation can drive even aristocrats to acts of shocking depravity. The gambling addiction that destroyed Sir Robert's honor also destroyed his sister's final dignity. A cautionary tale about how vice corrupts everything it touches, even love and family loyalty. The mystery of Shoscombe Old Place stands as one of Holmes's most macabre investigations, where the detection of crime required literally opening coffins and confronting the reality that sometimes the living dishonor the dead in pursuit of fleeting fortune. Join me next time as we investigate The Retired Colourman, a case where a seemingly sympathetic victim may actually be a cold-blooded murderer hiding behind a mask of grief.